Touchdown, Chargers!
We are back at the Bolt for another episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by the voice of the team, Matt Money Smith. It is Minicamp week, promo day on Monday. Everybody in the building, Money, that's the best sign.
Yeah, you were here Monday. I was here yesterday. We're both here today. And look, the veterans are here. That's kind of my big takeaway. The big question was, you know, after skipping voluntary OTAs, would Rashawn Slater be here? They're negotiating, you know, what's going to be an incredibly lucrative contract extension. I think it bodes well for both sides, at least from my perspective, that he's here. That, you know, it's not so contentious, that it's a holdout, that you have conversations in the media like the Bengals are having with Shamar Stewart over his first-round pick contract and Trey Hendrickson demanding a trade and refuses to show up. Like, and it's not like he was holding in like Derwin was in August. You know, he's out there working, man. He was out there working, taking all the reps with the first-team O-line. So of all the things that are going to happen over the next 3 days, you know, going back to yesterday, today, tomorrow, all these this entire week, like, that's my biggest takeaway.
That's the biggest encouraging sign, I think, coming in Monday. He was here for promo day, obviously on the grass yesterday. And you mentioned guys like Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt, Terry McLaurin. I mean, these guys are not at mandatory minicamp, which seems to be a bit of an issue from a contractual perspective. I think everybody in this building understands the business, understands what it is and what Rashawn's trying to accomplish for his family. Jim Harbaugh even alluded to it. Yeah. But just to see him out there with that starting five, you know, what got me so juiced up hearing Greg Roman talk to you about Joe Alt, just to see those guys together yesterday was pretty special.
Yeah, when you look, and we've seen Joe, he was out voluntary OTAs, but you can see it. Like, after you hear it from Coach and then your eyes are now looking for it, it's like, oh, yeah. You can kind of see, you can flex your tries, Chris, instead of me trying to flex my spindly little arms. All that weight gain you're taking.
No.
But you can see it. Now that you're looking for it, it's like, oh, yeah, you can see more definition in Alt's body. And I'll tell you, man, like, the other thing, I was standing with our friend Popper, and we were watching the O-line early, and I said, it's hilarious. Like, when I, and, you know, again, you're considerably larger than I am, but when I stand next to Zion, I feel like a child. When Zion is taking, you know, snapping the ball next to Mekhi Becton, he looks like a child. And he's 6'4", 315 pounds. And next to Mekhi Becton, it looks like, is this like a kid on a high school visit that's like just kind of getting a couple reps? Like, it is wild to see the size of the right side of that line in action with someone, you know, Bozeman 6'5", Zion 6'4", and it's just hilarious to see the juxtaposition of those two people.
Well, with Joe 6'8", 330, Mekhi is 360. Yeah. And Joe said, listen, I have him in height. He goes, but I didn't think there was anybody bigger than me. And Mekhi has me. Yeah. And, like, make no mistake, we interviewed Jim Hill and myself. Jim's like 6'3", I'm 6'4". Joe's 6'8". He looks like he's like 7 foot with cleats on when we did the interview. It's hilarious seeing him. But I brought up the fact that Coach Roman told you that he was going to be a hands-down All-Pro, and he said the biggest difference for him was just last year was making the NFL, doing the combine, going through everything. It was a whirlwind. This year, it's like, all right, perfecting your craft now, looking at everything on film, working on the things you need to work on, and that's been the biggest difference for him. And it's like not hyperbole. Like when Coach Roman says, like, hey, if you saw us practice last year to this year, it's just it's night and day. I don't have to say anything else. You just need to watch it. And I feel like that's kind of the comfort level that some of these guys have in year two.
Yeah, and the interesting, like, one of the interesting things to me is, you know, it's because of the advent of fantasy football, the proliferation of it, the millions upon millions of people that play it. It's led to the NFL becoming a skill position league. You know, that's what people focus on. What are the wide receivers, the running backs, the quarter? What's happening there? Tight ends. You know, Coach Harbaugh and Coach Roman came in and established this is a team where the offensive line is considered a weapon, and it's the tip of the spear. And you heard what Coach had to say last week about winning in the trenches is priority number one. That when you don't do that, everything else, he kind of walked us through how everything goes awry. And it bleeds over to us, to everybody in the media that covers this team, that Rashawn Slater's contract extension has been the number one, you know, sort of conversation going into this mandatory minicamp, that the step that Joe Alt's going to take from year 1 to year 2, that the addition of Mekhi Becton, that this combo, whatever it may be, of Bozeman and Zion, it's been the biggest storyline of this offseason. And it's just wild to think, because there is of the other 31 teams, there is no other team that focuses on offensive line like we do here with the Chargers. And I'm sure it, warms the cockles of Coach Harbaugh's heart to know that that's kind of, and it's not just us here, it's all the media, it's all the beat writers are so focused on, can they get this right? Because we know what it looks like on a Harbaugh coach team when the lines are right, the amount of dominance that you can have.
And I think it ratchets up a little bit too when you have Omarion, Hampton, and Najee Harris in the backfield too, and all the talk of the running game. And we know that 3/5 of the line is set with Slade on the left, Alt on the right, and Mekhi Becton at right guard. This Bozeman-Zion combination, and if it's going to flop, Zion played a lot of center yesterday.
They won a
minicamp. But, Coach Harbaugh had this elite 9,
yeah,
right? Zion's one of the elite 9.
Yeah.
So Alt, Slater, Zion, Ladd, Herbert, Mack, Derwin, Dayon, and Thule. So those 3 guys across the line, these are the guys he considers elite in terms of training and what they mean to the football team.
That's the key. I think people were sort of I saw some people talking about it, and obviously when you put Zion into that conversation, I get a lot of social media traffic from people like, and I said, understand, from a training standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, an athleticism standpoint, that's how you get drafted number 17 overall as a guard, because you are elite in all of those categories. And that's what Coach was alluding to. He was talking about, because it came out of his, for people that didn't hear the presser, he was talking about Rashawn Slater and how he wasn't here for voluntary OTAs, yet he showed up. Herbert put him through the conditioning test. Yeah. He aced it and said,
too easy.
Too easy. And he said, Slater's one of the elite 9. So that's to put it into context, that was the context. And then he went on to point out, and when you think it's these are the guys that showed up in incredible shape, that dedicated their off season to making sure their bodies were ready to go at voluntary OTAs the second they got here and got put through that conditioning test. So that's the context. But I think it's also important for people that are saying, well, what about Zion? Yes, Zion, he's elite. He is physically, athletically, from a trait standpoint, the way you want your guard, your interior lineman to be built, check, A+. He's got it all. Yeah. And that's why this is all happening, that's why they're going through this, because they know he's got everything else. What's it going to take to get that consistency, to get that to click, because we know what it looks like. And I think that's the other thing, Chris, is that he's putting in the work.
Sure.
The guy's putting in the work. And so I think there's this sort of one hand washes the other. Hey, if you're going to invest in us and invest your time and your sweat equity into us, then we're going to invest our coaching and our teaching and our opportunity into you. And I think Zion has got a lot of that going with this coaching staff.
Again, Coach Roman just talked about the traits that he has as a potential center. And this isn't going to be solved overnight. This is something where I think Coach said 8 to 10 days into training camp is where I want to have a better idea of who is going to be kind of the penciled in starters. So Bozeman and Zion, and who knows who else may raise their hand for a potential position across the line, but it seems like those are the 2 leaders in the clubhouse with Zion at center.
Yeah, look, until the pads come on, it's offensive
it's
line.
Tough.
Although Coach brought up yesterday, when evaluating that, you can still evaluate that he wants that punch. That first step is the punch, is the jab. And he's like, and absolutely, we can evaluate that, and I want to see what that first step is, and you can take a lot away from that, from watching that. So while it's hard for someone like me to process that when I'm watching, to see which guy's got is in the lead there, for Coach Devlin, Coach Hardwick, Coach Roman, Coach Harbaugh, they know what they see and they know what it looks like. So there is value in what they're going through even without pads.
Yeah. Seeing Alt on Monday and seeing Ladd on Monday, you can just tell the leap that they're going to make. And it kind of leads me to this year's rookie class. And Coach Harbaugh said, collectively, in terms of wanting to do the work and handling their business, this is the best rookie group that he's been around. He's like, listen, I'm not telling you that they're going to be better than Alt or Ladd, though they have the license to do so. But it seems to be something where when Coach says this is the best rookie group I've been around. I don't think it's hyperbole. I really think that these guys are working really hard.
Yeah, and you can see it on their bodies. Like, you can see Ladd. You can see that he looks different. You know, that he definitely dedicated a considerable amount of time into the weight room, and that body does look. Same with Joe Alt. And so, yeah, I think. But I wouldn't expect anything else from Harbaugh. You know, I don't think we've ever been around a more pro player coach than Harbaugh. And I know you're going to get into the patches as well, but I think everything that he does, he's unlike anyone I've ever been around in any sport. You know, I haven't covered basketball as long as I did, and now football as long as I have. When I was doing national games, all the different coaching staffs that I got to be around, college and professional, I've just never had anyone sort of want to, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, like that feels the responsibility of maximizing the potential of his players, that he owes it to them, that let's let them know that we appreciate what they're doing, and I feel this responsibility. It felt like the traffic was always going in a different direction. Hey, what can these players prove to me that it's worth me putting them on the field? Whereas with Coach, I feel like it's you flip the script. It's what can I do to coach this incredibly talented individual to make sure I get the most and we get the most out of him. And it's fun to be around, and I can understand why his players are so committed to playing their tails off for him.
We saw it all of last year. When you win a big game, you get like a sweatshirt that says like Thursday Night Thriller or whatever it is, or a lunch pail. You mentioned the patches. Like, the patches are something where you really get to kind of show off what you've done in the league, what you've done throughout your career. And I thought Derwin said it best. He's like, you know, we're pros. We get it, but there is a competition aspect. He goes, I want to have more All-Pros or Walter Payton Man of the Years than Khalil.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that kind of inherent competition among pros where you would say, okay, this works in high school and college, but Coach Harbaugh has a way of making it work in the NFL.
Yeah, and I was talking to Lorenzo Neal earlier today, and he didn't see the presser. When he heard, he's like, that's awesome. He's like, I'd be way into that. I was like, yeah, you'd have the block of granite. You'd have about 700 of those down your chest. And he said the same thing you just said. He's like, you would think as a professional that it's like, oh, that's, I remember getting my skull and crossbones in Pop Warner, and, I got my hammer, my sledgehammer in college. And he said, but he's like, yeah, dude, I think I'd be way into that. Like, I would absolutely be chasing down, all my gains in the weight room, all my block of granites, all my big hits. And it's still, like, I don't want to, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, but it's still grown men playing a kid's game. I mean, that's ultimately what they get to do. Now, they play it at a very violent level, don't get me wrong, but it's still a game, and it's still fun, and there is still an element of that. And that's why I think this stuff works, that
I 100% agree.
Yeah, like you said, the sweatshirts, to remember that you were the first Thursday night flex ever, and that you went out there and did a number on the Broncos in that second half and won a division game and punched your ticket into the playoffs, and now you've got it emblazoned on the front of a sweatshirt, and it's cool. And we see those guys wear those sweatshirts more than anything else.
All offseason,
I see more of those Bengals and the Broncos sweatshirts than any other sweatshirt that you can choose from. And they can walk into the equipment room and get whatever sweatshirt they want, and those are the ones they wear.
It almost harkens back to when they were kids. And like you said, this was a kid's game. You go the next morning to look at your name in the paper, when you were in elementary school or high school, to see like your box score. And those, like, the little things that I think Coach, he has this unique way of connecting you to why you fell in love with the game. And again, it's not a corny thing. It's something that I feel like, yeah, we're pros, we're making millions of dollars, but this is the essence of football. And Coach just has an unbelievable way of connecting with these guys. And the fact that it's year 2, it just seems like everybody here has a very they have a way of understanding exactly what this requires this year. Like, last year was, okay, Coach came in, we're trying to learn a new system, we're trying to figure out him, he's trying to figure out us. Everybody knows everybody now.
Yeah, and that's, look, it's 11 pieces on a chessboard moving, in some sort of connection in order to make a play work.
Yeah.
And so when you have the connections off the field, it's impossible not to believe that, everything you just detailed goes into the positive effect of what can happen on the field, that all of this stuff works, or else they wouldn't do it. That's ultimately what my big takeaway is. Oh, patches on the sweatshirts. They wouldn't do it if they didn't think it works. This coaching staff, this front office, they believe there's value in it. And that's, and I think that's why they do it. And anybody that was in that room yesterday, the aura that Derwin exudes when he walks into a room. Yeah. When you see that smile and you asked, and he was asked about the patches, and he just gets this huge ear-to-ear grin. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got, and do you have the most? I got the most.
It's like I'm trying to get the ribs.
Exactly. It's like you can see that it works. And look, that ultimately goes to what you always hear from coach, and that's or any coach, and that's Tom Brady, first guy in, last guy to leave. Justin Herbert, first guy in, last time. That's part of it. You want to be Derwin James? Well, look at the right side of his jersey. That's right there. Go get it. That one's just working out right. That one's showing up on. That's what some of those patches are. They're attainable, and I think it's not just a patch for an All-Pro, for a Pro Bowl, but it's a patch for a playoff win. It's a patch for the block of granite patch because you did what Herb asked you to do. Like I don't want to say they're easily attainable. Nothing is easy in the world of the NFL and football, but they're attainable. And I think that's sort of that inclusive. And that's kind of what he said about the whole Elite Nine. Someone said, is there just 9? Does it rotate? And he's like, no, let's go. I want it to be 90. Let's get the Elite 90. So that opportunity to and that's the other thing is it wasn't like, oh, yeah, the elites, it's Khalil Mack, it's Herbert, it's Derwin. No. Zion Johnson's in there. Ladd McConkey, a second-year player, is in there. Tui Pelotu is in there. Like Zion Johnson's in there, a guy that's maybe fighting for a starting spot at center or left guard. Like, any competitors are welcome, man.
Welcome, man.
Anybody can join the crew.
Derwin is the perfect example too of like when you have your best players buying into all of this stuff, it's infectious and it's going to kind of roll downhill with all these other players. And Derwin was great at the podium because he outlines how everything went last year, but he also does such a great job of kind of propping up his teammates. He says, Dayon, All-Pro this year. Yeah. Tarheeb, I'm looking for him to be Pro Bowl, All-Pro. And just kind of outlining how Tarheeb has changed, how Dayon, inexplicably, he just didn't play his rookie year. Yeah. To see what he did last year, 147 total tackles, a Pro Bowl snub. He's got a lot of meat on the bone, too, to kind of look at where he was and where he can go in year 3. And I think Derwin's kind of pushing him that, especially wearing the green dot.
Yeah, and that's, it's both the way he play, it's both the play and the leadership. As you said, he's got the green dot, so he's got to take on some of that responsibility. And I think that's one of the things that makes Derwin special, such a special player, that he doesn't need to be the leader of the defense. He's just Derwin, and Derwin's, it's just inherent that that's what he's going to be. So for him to say, no, I went to down, and you got to do more of this. This is your show, man. You got the green dot. You're the mic backer. You're the one that's directing traffic. So let's go. And I think that's. And then when you get that, then that sort of translates to, okay, well, if I'm going to be that guy, well, that means I got to work out more. So now I'm one of these Elite 9, because I'm a guy that's in there all the time, because I've got to now lead by example and make sure I'm putting in all the time. It all, like I said, it's a collective. It all works. It all works together, and it's exciting to see, a bunch of guys on the field who look like they're ready to take snaps tomorrow. That these are not guys that are working out to get into shape, to be ready to go, on September 5th. But they look like they're ready to go right now. That
standard was set last year.
Yeah, no doubt.
Denzel on Monday, we spoke with him, and we talked about just the difference that he made when he was actually on the field for this team, and just that linebacker core in general now with, we're expecting Junior Colson to be healthy now, so that's a very strong unit. I want to touch on the safeties because Derwin said something very interesting. He said, I'm a better player when Elijah and Alohi are on the field. Yeah. And I think I don't want to say we discounted it, but like we may have forgotten just the importance of Elijah Molden throughout the course of last year. He comes in, I think, August 28th, has a career high in interceptions, forced fumbles. I think the 3 interceptions that he had were all in wins on the road. And he was playing such great football until he got hurt in New England. And then you talk about Alohi. Alohi got hurt hurt his hamstring in that Baltimore game. So although he was out for the back half of the year, you lose Elijah the second to last game of the regular season. So by the time you get to the playoffs, you have no Elijah and you have Alohi who's just returning, and it kind of put a lot of strain on Derwin. Even though Derwin was still playing where he was playing throughout the course of the year, I mean, you had to rely on guys like Marcus May in the Atlanta game. So seeing those guys healthy, I think that's going to be a really welcome sight to see, and I'm really excited to see Elijah in year 2 of this program as well.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is just how valuable was Tony Jefferson last year.
Huge,
and you're talking about another. You heard what you were there when he stepped to the lectern and talked about how different it is for him, where his body is. Another year with Ben Herbert, how he feels as a football player. Like, it's an important position for this team, and it's why they drafted Mickens and why there's going to probably be 5 safeties, which is pretty rare for a roster to carry 5 safeties, but it's kind of like Coach Klingscale said. It's not, don't ever think of it as slot corner, nickel corner, dime backer, safety, free, box. Like, it's just 4 or 5 guys. Who are my 4 best guys? Who are my 5 best guys? Who are my 6 best guys? That's all it is. And so I think it's a much better way to approach it, to make sure that Derwin can play big nickel. Derwin can play box. Derwin can play free. Elijah can play nickel. Elijah can play free. Elijah can play box, and on and on and on. Alohi can play, that's the true value of this team, is that Tarheeb can play slot or outside. That, like, if you can get as many of those guys as possible, you're going to protect yourself, because injuries happen in this game. Debilitating injuries happen in this game. Crippling injuries to your chances to win football games happen in this sport. And so they just do. And that's how, like you just detailed, no Elijah Molden, Alohi on 50%, and yet the defense is effectively pitching a shutout until the final 5 minutes of the second half, when they just ran out of gas because the offense was struggling to get anything going, and they just spent way too much time on the field, and it finally bit them. And it was a broken play of all things that that got them, a wacky snap that got away, that kind of kick-started that Texans offense. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. I just started meandering. Oh yeah, to Elijah's point, like, that's the whole front office coaching, from the head coach all the way down to the position coaches, identifying talent. And there's going to be more, because Joe Ortiz told us when he was here. He's like, we got our guys keeping an eye on all the rosters and all the camps, and that those that moves are going to be made.
It goes back to the beginning of free agency, where you're patient, and fans are waiting, like, hey, what's going to happen? Are we going to sign anybody? And you eventually get Becton, you eventually get Harris. Just that's the perfect example. Elijah Molden, this is after camp, August 28th, and think of the impact that he had on this season. I mentioned the rookie class and what Coach Harbaugh has said about these guys. You saw Omarion Hampton on the grass yesterday. He looked different.
I'm telling you, man, this guy, like, your naked eye, when you see the explosiveness and just how when he. What does Lowe always say? If we're even, I'm leaving. And that's Omarion Hampton, man. You let him get the edge, and it is over. And then just, from where our vantage point as the media, we're not allowed to walk onto the field. We're standing all the way in one of the end zones. And sometimes it's kind of far, and so you've got all of the defense in front of you. You can't quite see through the holes, and then you'll just see the middle of the line, number 8, explode through, and it's just like poof, out of a cannon. I mean, it's next level, man, with the explosiveness that this guy has. And it's, yesterday, same thing. There was Gadsden had a beautiful grab on a throw from Herbert that you saw that athleticism. I'm
excited
too.
About him.
And I think, and like Coach said, I think for people, we get excited about the new. We all like new, and we all like what's next, and he said, Oronde's going to have a chance to have a huge impact as a Charger, but I think he also sort of laid the expectations of he's young, and we got to get him kind of built up to block and to do the things that tight ends do for us, while also acknowledging Ty Conklin. I think Ty's going to have a big year, and so I think it's just setting. You've got Will Dissly, Ty Conklin, Tucker Fisk. You've kind of got those 3, and it's finding those. How many snaps is it per game? Kind of like what we used to hope for with Stone Smart. It's like, can we get 5-7 snaps out of him, man, and get a little bit of athleticism out there? And I'm hoping that Oronde can provide that.
Well, we saw that from Stone Smart at the end of last year.
That's what I mean.
And Coach Roman talked about Gadsden, just said, hey, he's more of that kind of prototypical pass-catching tight end right now. So just finding a place for him. The offense is just going to be different this year.
Way different.
It's going to be way different this year. We talked about Najee and just his durability in the NFL, and obviously big news for the Broncos signing J.K. Dobbins yesterday. And I'm
excited for J.K.
I'm happy for J.K., and I wish it wasn't with that team and seeing him twice a year. Going to see him in week 3. But, I loved what J.K. provided for this team. The only thing is the consistency. He missed 4 games.
Yeah. And he wasn't right in the playoff game.
Yeah, he wasn't right in the playoff game. I think 9 for 26 in that.
Just wasn't the same guy.
The first 2 weeks of the season, too, he was unbelievable. He averaged like 9.5 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns.
Had those 2 big explosives.
Yeah, 260 yards, I think, the first 2 games. After that, he was like 3.8 a carry.
Yeah.
And he had good games mixed in, but I think the coaching staff is looking for that consistency from weeks 1 to 17. So having 2 guys who can carry the load, and Gus just wasn't right last year.
No.
And that was from the beginning of the year. It's a completely different backfield now, and I think the way that they're going to play with Hampton and Harris is just going to be markedly different from last year.
Yeah, look, it's a first-round pick, right? You expect your first-round picks to play immediately and to have an impact. That's just the reality of the NFL. You're rarely, outside of quarterback, and even now the expectations on quarterback are quite immense, but you rarely take someone in the first round and expect them to be a developmental player. They're expected to step in immediately and produce, like Joe Alt did last year as one of the best tackles in the game. And when it doesn't go right, the red flag goes up immediately. And unfortunately, it gets stuck to you to some degree until you prove otherwise or for the rest of your career. And so I think it's, I don't think there's anything wrong with having incredibly high expectations on Omarion, that he's going to have a serious impact and hopefully provide, because that's what, that's kind of what the Greg Roman offense is about, right? It's not necessarily he got 4.5 on this carry, 6 on this carry, 8 on this carry. No, there might be some 2s and 3s and 2. Oh, bang, here's your 50, and here's the backbreaker, and that's what Omarion has. Obviously he can pick up those 5 and 6 he's huge and has incredible vision and explosiveness. But what I'm saying is, that's the guy that can do what J.K. did last year early on when you're talking about jab, 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 haymaker. Because he's got that type of speed.
Trey Harris is another player that I think fans are going to have eyes on in training camp, and we'll see him out here the next couple of days. But, last week we talked about what Coach Law said about Quentin being the starter, of course, June 5th. But Trey Harris could be that player poised to take on a much larger role. And we can't anoint him a starter if we don't see it on the grass, and we're not going to see it on the grass and pads until July and August. So I am very intrigued to see how Trey Harris looks, the chemistry that he builds with Justin during minicamp at the beginning of training camp, to see if he can actually crack the lineup and play meaningful snaps this year.
Yeah, and I think that's going to come in training camp. Right now the vets are getting most of the snaps. Q is out there. Willie Snead was out here.
How about that?
Yeah, getting a little tryout in. But yeah, and Mike's been working off to the side, but that's what we're seeing. It's Jalen Johnson, and it's a lot of those players that they have out there right now. So I think once the vets leave on Thursday, and it's all those rookies and stuff, you're going to see more and more of those reps. And even Coach Law said it, right? The banquet circuit for Trey and Kendra Lambert-Smith, and they've got to get through that, and they've got to kind of get themselves into this Ben Herbert program and into the shape that they expect. But we know it can be done because Ladd McConkey broke every Chargers rookie record last year and was one of the best receivers in the NFL. So we certainly know it can be done.
Man, Ladd, what are you expecting from Ladd this year? After seeing, he talked last week, and Coach has raved about him. I didn't think we were going to see a rookie season similar to what Keenan did, right? The fact that we saw it last year, and there's so much more on his plate. There's obviously going to be more eyes on Ladd this year as the wide receiver 1. Are you expecting a similar season, or based on what we talked about with the running game, how does that change the offense?
I mean, I think as Coach Lal pointed out in his presser last week, he's like, we saw all that attention on, and Greg Roman said it too in our conversation with him. Just, he got all that attention. And that means guys are going to be in one-on-ones, and those guys have to win those one-on-ones. And now that you have, Mike Williams back, and you have Tyler Conklin as a tight end, these guys that have proven they can put up big numbers, that Tyler Conklin can have a 600-yard, 6-touchdown season, and Mike Williams can have a 1,000-yard, 10-touchdown season. Those guys need to go out there and win, and same thing with Q, a guy that put together a, whatever it was, 14-catch, 160-yard performance against the Raiders. Do it consistently. You're going to get one-on-ones because all of the attention, the Chiefs are going to focus on Ladd. They're going to stick Trent McDuffie on him, I would imagine, immediately. They'll probably put McDuffie back in the slot if that's where, Ladd's going to line up, and put best on best. And now it's up to the other guys to take advantage of everything else. And I just still think Ladd can't be stopped. He just can't. He's just too sudden. He's too good in his releases that you're going to see a lot of double teams on him. I just think that's the only way you're going to be able to try to slow him down.
Money, what else did you see from day one? You guys will probably see this, and Justin will have already spoken at the podium later today as we tape this on a Wednesday. But day one observations from camp, what did you see?
Yeah, just like I said, the offensive line is wild to see, just the sheer size. But that goes back to OTAs. I'll share, there was a former quarterback out watching, and I don't know if he just had not seen Herbert up close or what, but he just he walked up, he's like, that dude's ridiculous. That's what an elite NFL quarterback looks like. He's ridiculous. And so it's someone who played in the league, had a pretty long career, and had said, yeah, that's just stupid what that guy's able to do, the way the ball comes out.
So
and so anytime you go into a season with that, and you saw some of the throws yesterday. Oh yeah, Jalen Reagor was another one. Jalen Reagor's getting a ton of snaps. The coaching staff loves that guy, man. He is getting a ton of reps out there. So I feel like I'm looking up, and I'm always seeing number 88. I'm trying to think of what else.
People forget that Reagor was a first-round pick.
Yeah, and I think that's why you end up getting all these opportunities.
Yeah.
As you get that first-round pick stuck to you, and you're like, okay, why did all these teams evaluate him as a first-round talent, and he can't find a home? Can we pull that first-round talent out of him? And that's, what a lot of teams end up going, fishing for.
Dude, I remember that play he made in Arizona, but he fumbled at the one.
Terrible.
I mean, it was like what could go wrong did go wrong for the Chargers in that game. You fumble like the first series of the game, and then that beautiful pass to Reagor down the sideline, fumbles at the 1 yard line. But those were the flashes that we saw at TCU, and why Howie Roseman picked him over Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, he's fast. He's definitely fast. So, to me, it's Omarion Hampton certainly stood out. Tarheeb still is just so good mirroring routes, even though there's no contact out there really. You can just see the way he mirrors, how he moves is just special.
The expectations on a fifth-round pick seem to be staggering, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is saying, Derwin said Pro Bowl, All-Pro. You talked to Coach Minner about just what a different player he is from last year to this year. Tarheeb is a fifth-round pick, and Cam Hart too, but Tarheeb really, I think he had that Atlanta game kind of put him on the map.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, it's corner's a funny one, right? It's why you do see a handful of late round or undrafted corners make it, because a lot of it is just, you got to be able to see it. You've got to be comfortable backpedaling. You've got to have the hips. You've got to be able to kind of, it's a feel position, feeling where's this receiver going, where's he taking me, and why is he taking me there, and what should I anticipate is happening behind me that I can't see. And Tarheeb just has that innate ability. He's got incredible feel for the game. And sometimes you're just drafting traits like Reek Woolen in the 4th round because he's a giant and he's fast, and it works out because the polish isn't there, but then you're able to add the polish, or you see the polish and you're like, okay, this guy's sliding at corner because he didn't run a 4.39 or a 4.45. He ran a 4.49. But I see the production. Is it just, is there something, does it not matter? And that's kind of, I think that's sort of the thing with Tarheeb, is that people that went back, I can't remember his teammate's name at Maryland, that got drafted in the 1st round the year before.
Is it Baker?
I can't remember Jackson. Anyway, that everybody said, oh yeah, I was watching him, and then I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's, I think that's sort of how you end up finding a great, and in the case of Cam, he's got the speed, he's got the traits, he's got the pedigree, he's got the flash, the splashes. He just got hurt a lot. And so that's what caused him to slide. So if you can keep him healthy, well, now you've got 2 guys that certainly should have been drafted ahead of what their slot was.
Let's not forget about Dante Jackson too.
Yeah.
We hadn't really talked much about him. Derwin talked about him yesterday at the podium. If you get Derwin's stamp of approval, you're all right with us. But Dante was the class of 2018 coming out with Derwin, and I think Derwin's excited to have him in the secondary.
Well, I think I think we talked about this with Conklin and Disley. That Will brought up the same thing with Conklin because we go to the combine every year, and when you're at the combine, it's alphabetical. So James, Jackson, so Derwin and Dante are in the same group. And the type of leader Derwin is. So he was obviously the alpha of the defensive back group. And so I'm sure that he and Dante were hanging out together quite a bit and built that bond like Derwin does with every one of his teammates. And so that goes a long way, And what do we always hear about, players? Like when we talk to players that play with Derwin, they always say there's just like this weird, you don't want to let him down. He's just kind of like one of those guys that you get around. And so for Dante Jackson, a guy that has had ball hawk production his whole career, that has, had a few issues, and that's why he's available for the number that they got him for. It's still a good number. Still made a decent
it's like the
chunk
Christian
of cash.
Fulton role this year.
Exactly. It's like, can you get him to put it all together? Can you get him to be a little bit better in run support? Can you get him to be a little bit better at the catch point with tackling? Because we know he's going to get some, like he's going to pick off some balls. That's just, it's going to happen. So, because that's what he's done his whole career. It's just, can you get the rest of it? And now that you've got Derwin out there and you see the way Derwin plays as a complete defensive back, whether it's blitzing, interceptions, sack fumbles, tackling, providing a little punch to kind of set a tone, like he does it all. And so now that's who you're operating under. Yeah, it should work out. It's a guy that's got talent, but it's consistency. And that's kind of what so many players are searching for.
Surveying the league this week, we mentioned Dobbins, so we'll see JK week 3 at SoFi when the Broncos come to town. Aaron Rodgers is officially a Pittsburgh Steeler, so it'll be Aaron on Sunday Night Football at SoFi Stadium. That'll be
That's what they were banking on.
Yep.
That's what they were banking. They were not banking on Mason Rudolph and his new mustache. Instead, they were banking on Aaron Rodgers, and they got it. They got it. So we'll have a Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers showdown. It'll be exciting.
Yeah. Anything else before we say goodbye to one of our trusty producers?
Our man Will. We love Will.
Hollywood Will.
We're going to miss him.
Hahn.
We're going to miss him, but he's going to give us inside info on property up in the 805 area code, so we're very excited about that.
He's not going too far from us.
Get me a sweet surf shack right outside of Rincon. That's what Will's going to turn me on to with his fancy property future.
Before his last day?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Nobody consumes more sugar-enhanced energy drinks than our man Will. You want someone that's like getting the 24-ounce can, like the Modelo 3-pack that's like 24 ounces a can. Like that's what he does in energy drinks.
But who was it before? The year before Will was here, it was Bretto. Was it Bretto and Jordan?
Oh, yeah. Bretto got worked. And this year Will got worked. And all of his energy drinks have something like, it's like NOS energy, muscle car energy. Like, it's like, what are you doing to your body, man?
Supreme brain performance. Or is it sugar or no sugar?
Oh, it's sugar. It's he's finally cut it out.
Cut it out after the combine.
I think he was into the Jolt Cola, messaging. All the sugar and twice the caffeine is what Will was operating on. I'm gonna miss slamming 7 beers. I didn't do that. We're gonna miss him. He's a good dude.
A word of advice to Will's future employer: he drinks a lot of energy drinks. Way to cut out the sugar. So he bounced off the walls in Santa Barbara, man.
Exactly right.
We appreciate you, buddy, and appreciate you guys watching and listening. It's been a fun off season, and we will continue to have the guests. I think next week, Money.
I think so. That's the plan. So wrap up these mandatory minicamp practices. Get back to the rookies next week, and continue. Brock and the whole team have been great with us about putting guys with us, so we're looking forward to that.
Absolutely. All right, for Money, I am Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We will see you next week.